Hey guys, I'm Demented Jumper and today I'll be reviewing Crash Bandicoot The Insane Trilogy, which was released back in 2017 for the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One and PC. Now, this game is basically a collection of the original three Crash games: Crash 1, Crash 2, Cortex Strikes Back and Crash 3 Warped. And basically, each story basically shows us Crash and Coco against the Doctor and Cortex, and they take place in various areas and basically tell different stories with different locations and various bosses to face. And I think that this trilogy, the collection, is quite enjoyable because if you look at because this is like a more HD version of the original Crash games, you can clearly see that the graphics are largely improved. So on screen there'll be a picture of like original Crash and then a picture of Insane Trilogy version of Crash. So you can see that both versions are very, very different graphics wise. And yeah, and this game basically revamped all of the levels as well, and also introduces two new levels, and that is like Stormy Ascent and Future Tense. And these are two levels that were originally Stormy Ascent I think was originally going to be in the original Crash game, but I think it was taken out for being too hard. And I think Future Tense, I think it was a new level that was designed, or might have been like Stormy Ascent, it could have been removed from being too hard or something like that. I'm not 100% sure about Future Tense, but I do know that Stormy Ascent was taken out of the original Crash game because it's so hard. And you can clearly tell that these are two very difficult levels to basically to beat, because like with the levels in Crash games, if you look at all of them, so Crash 1, 2, 3, it's about time, and the two other ones that were originally like Crash 4 and 5, that were released back in I think the early 2000s. You can because like all those levels basically had you basically just going through the level, avoiding obstacles, collecting boxes, Wumpa fruits and gems, that sort of stuff. But in Future Tense and Stormy Ascent, you have to be quite accurate in where you place your jumps, your spins, when you go to like hit certain enemies, that sort of thing, because you work because there might be some platforms that might move in like at a very fast pace. So that means if you're like let's say on Stormy Ascent, and and the platform there's like an moving up and down platform, you will have to time that, so then you can go to the platform, then go to the next platform once you reach the top, and then move on to the next area and try and get every single crate that's in the game. And one of some of the differences in the Insane Trilogy and in the original Crash games is that in the Insane Trilogy, you can play as either Crash or Coco, and I think that's a really cool way, because because you can kind of see like they got like different ways to play them, even though they're quite similar. So if you look at Crash, you've got its famous spin attack, but with Coco she kind of does this sort of like spin kick thing, where she does a spin but she uses her leg to do a sort of kicking motion. And I think that's really cool, and it's kind of like it's sort of different format to how Crash fights. And also, if you look at Crash 3, that was the first Crash game that introduced time trials. But in the Insane Trilogy, the time trials were brought over to Crash 2 and 1, and I think it's a really nice way to revamp the game and give it more of that nuance to it, and give it more. Give the first two Crash games a bit more content to get, and I think the time trials were a nice addition to Crash 1 and 2 in the Insane Trilogy, because the time trials can be difficult at times, depending on which level you're doing, And yeah, and the time trials, I think are really cool addition to future Crash games from Crash 3 onwards, including the Insane Trilogy, because the time trials are basically getting to the end of the level at a certain time, either like fast or slow or somewhere in the middle. And like the fastest, fastest relic you can get is a platinum one. Slowest one you can get is a sapphire one. The one in the middle is a gold one. And I feel like that's really cool and interesting, and I think the time trials were a cool and nice feature to be added into the Insane Trilogy for Crash 1 and 2. And now I'm going to choose some gameplay. So, when you boot up the game and start any file, I do like how the voice announcer says each game.
Crash Bandicoot!
That's Crash 1.
It's Crash Bandicoot 2! Cortex strikes back!
That's Crash 2.
It's Crash Bandicoot Board!
So yeah, I do quite like how each title for each game is said, because you can clearly see it's Crash with Crash Bandicoot. You can see some more of a happy-go-lucky kind of tone, where the second one is kind of sort of angry, sort of calm, that sort of stuff. And for Crash 3 Warped, you can clearly see it's more anger in the voice. And I do like how the Crash games kind of keep their original maps, and they kind of keep the whole way you can do the levels. For Crash 1 in particular, I feel like it's a bit more linear, if I'm using it correctly, because it's basically on a straight path. But what I do like is that you can, at the very beginning of the game, you can go basically straight towards Stormy Ascent and just basically play the game or play that particular level before you can even play any of the other levels. And I do like the hint for this, which is basically good luck, you're going to need it because of how difficult this level is. And yeah, and it's just I think the hint system in each game is quite nice, because of each hint is basically try and do this in a particular way, or you'll only be able to collect a gem without dying, that sort of thing. And I think that each hint is quite interesting, and like in every single Glove of the Crash game, you can spin, you can basically do a jump, but then from Crash 2 onwards you've got the crawl, which I think is quite nice, and I can't get up this particular part. Yeah, I'm now going to show you the other maps from the other games. So with Crash 2's one, I kind of prefer this sort of a hub overworld place over the original one in Crash 1, because you can basically just choose any of the levels that you want. And I do like the fact that the more higher you go, the more the different themes it can be. And if you're playing the Insane Trilogy, if you press R2, you can swap between Crash and Coco, which I think is quite nice. But the only way to find Coco or use or play as her is finding her in different locations in the different worlds. So I think in Crash 1 you can find her in, I think, the first island. If you're playing Crash 2, you can find Coco here in the ice area. Then I think in Crash 3, I think you can find her in the hub world, I think. And I do like some of the names for this, for some of the levels. So you've got Turtle Woods, Snow Go, Hang 8, The Pits, Crash Dash, and then you've got the particular boss of the area that you're in. And I do like how in Crash 2 you can see the how many crystals there are in the game or in the level, and how many gems there are that you can collect. So obviously in every single level you can collect one crystal, but then sometimes in some of the levels you can collect either 2 gems or just the 1 gem, which I think is quite nice. And also you've got the time trial relics, and I think that's quite cool. And also, if you go down one more level, you can see the different warp areas, which I think is quite nice. So let's say I wanted to go into, let's say, Totally Fly. I'll go into that particular portal, and then I think I'll go into a particular area of the level and just go through that particular part. But the only way to activate those the portals is basically just finding another area of a different level to basically just activate the portals. I think it's quite nice. And yeah, and I think that with Crash 2 onwards, Slade is like kind of a nice improvement over Crash 1 because of how it can help you within certain aspects. And now I'm going to show you the overworld from Crash 3. So, like in Crash 2, Crash 3's overworld, hub world area is kind of similar, in which you basically go to a specific area and you just basically you can pick whichever level you want, but in order to get the boss level, you have to get like every other crystal in the other levels, which I think is quite nice. And I do like how in this game, whenever you go on a button, you can see a sort of preview of the particular level. So let's say for this one, it's basically got like lava in it. It's some sort of swampy area. For let's say level 3, it's basically some sort of not race, but sort of animal ride kart thing, I would say. I believe the Great Wall of China, I believe. And I do like how you can just go into the levels, and for some levels in Crash 3 you can either go as Crash or Coco, depending on which level that you're in. So in the Insane Trilogy you can go into any level as either Crash or Coco, but in the animal riding ones you can only go in as Coco, which I think is quite nice, because then you're not just using the same character over and over again. You can now play as a different character, which I feel like is refreshing. And yeah, I feel like that each game brings its own uniqueness to the game, because you can clearly see that the time and effort that was put into each game and shown out, and they are showing like how precise that they are in designing these levels, and seeing, oh, you can do this by doing a particular spin. You can fight particular enemies by using certain abilities or certain things in each level. That sort of thing is quite nice. And some of the obstacles are nice to use. So for instance, these I think paper dragons are something, I think origami dragons I think are quite nice obstacles to avoid. And now I'm going to quickly show you future tense, which is basically the like Stormy Ascent, like the hard level of the game. And also, if you want to switch, I think it's a bit fun the last clip, but if you want to switch between Crash or Coco, just press R2. So I might place Coco for the hard level, just so I can show you look how different she is towards Crash in terms of how she does spin attack. So that's what I'm going to do for some of future tense. So yeah. So also, I do like how in every Crash game, so from Crash 1 to 3 in the Insane Trilogy, I'm not too sure if it's the same in the original Crash games. So back when they were released in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I think. I do like how you can see, if you look on the right half of the stage, you can see the amount of gems you have, the amount of crystals you have, the different power-ups that you might have if you're playing Crash 3, the time trials and the different relics that you have, which I think is quite nice and interesting. And it also shows you how many crystals there are in the game, how many gems there are in the game, and how many relics that you have or need to collect if you want to get like the secret ending or something like that. And I do really enjoy that. Oh, so yeah, so if you can see, Crystal Lococo's spin, it's similar to Crash's, but if you can see, she can use her like leg as sort of like spin kick thing. Unlike with Crash, he's basically just using he's just doing a normal spin attack. While with Coco, she's basically doing a just a normal with Crash, he's basically doing a normal spin attack. Yeah, we got there in the end. And I do like how in Crash 3, one of the power-ups you can get is an infinite spin, which I think is quite nice. And can I get this? How far? Let's see how far. Ow. Okay. Let's see how far I can get in future tense. And also, I do like how Aku, I think that's the name of the mask that helps you in some of the games, can appear after you've lost a certain amount of lives, which I think is quite nice. I think it's like, because basically the Aku masks are basically there to give you some brief invincibility time, and I think that's quite nice, because then let's say you're halfway through the level, and then unless you've got an Aku mask, and an enemy hits you, and then you'll be invincible for like a few seconds, which I think is quite nice. Okay, so we got back to where we were. Ow. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so that's been it for the gameplay. Now it's time to go back to the review. So for my final verdict of Crash the Insane Trilogy, I think that it's a huge improvement over the original 3 games. I think that the cutscenes that you see are a lot better. For instance, let's say in Crash 2, that was quite nice. And like when you got all the gems and all the gems in Crash 2, and you were able to do the final secret cutscene, you could see the difference between those two. Between the original cutscene of that moment with when you get all the gems and find the laser Cortex's ship, and the new one in the Insane Trilogy, I think like you can see a clear difference in that. For Crash in particular, I feel like he's like a largely improved, and I think he and also with his design in the Insane Trilogy, a lot of the design is basically very similar to the one in the original games, even though it's like to me slightly similar, and you can see it's like well more polished than it is, because with Crash 1, 2 and 3 you can see that the graphics were quite blocky, because it was like a 3D game. It was like one of the earliest 3D games to come out at the time, and with the Insane Trilogy you can really see that all of the graphics for Crash, Cortex, and the levels themselves are well more polished out, and all of the edges have been, just chiseled away, and now you can just clearly see them, and it's like really well more well placed. And I think that the 2 extra levels, Stormy Ascent and Future Tense, are nice additions, so you can really test your Crash skills to the test. And yeah, I say that if you're wanting to get into the Crash games, I would highly suggest going and getting the Insane Trilogy, because it's really fun and it's really interesting to play. So that's been my review for Crash Bandicoot The Insane Trilogy. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.